The Carolina Hurricanes on Sunday night lose 4-1 to the Toronto Maple Leafs, finishing their home slate with a 31-9-1 record. But hey, it's always good to tie a team that won a Stanley Cup.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. Also do some baseball coverage at Cover the Corner at SB Nation. I'm also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a last week of the regular season Monday episode as we get to talk about the Hurricanes' 4-1 loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs, kind of talking a little bit about the Hurricanes' 7-3 win over the New York Rangers, and how they finished their home record with a 31-9-1 on the season. Unfortunately, we also have to talk about how the Hurricanes are 1-4-1 in their last 5 since clinching their playoff berth, and we get to hear from Taylor Hall postgame following the Hurricanes' loss on Sunday. So, like I said, the Hurricanes finish up their last game of the regular season at home. Last home regular season game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, which was on a second half of a back-to-back. Now, this comes after sweeping the New York Rangers in the regular season, winning 7-3 on Saturday, which was hey, you love to see it. The Hurricanes tied the home record of the 05-06 team, who finished 31-8-2. So there are some good signs, hopefully some good mojo, of the fact that the Hurricanes once again have now won 31 games at home in a regular season. The latest rendition of it with a good record like that is, the team who won the Stanley Cup. And of course, this comes off that win against the Rangers 7-3. You love to see it. I mean, we all know Seth Jarvis 3-point game, Sebastian Aho, got a goal. Jackson Blake with a multi-point game, Jordan Staal. Overall, a very much needed win for the Hurricanes, especially for Pyotr Chekhov. On Sunday, however, they had the opportunity to set a new home record of their 32nd and would have put themselves 1 point back at the Toronto Maple Leafs for their battle in the second seed for the Eastern Conference. In the end, however, the Toronto Maple Leafs did win 4-1 after goals from Holmberg, Matthews, Nylander, and John Tavares. Obviously, 3 of the 4 horsemen for the Maple Leafs all did their part in the win. Sebastian Aho did score for the Hurricanes. It was on a power play for his 29th of the season. And, of course, Seth Jarvis getting one of the assists for his third assist in the last 2 games. So, in the last 4 games, Seth Jarvis has gotten now 4 points, which, comes as no surprise. Now he has officially tied his points record in the season. With 2 games left, he has the opportunity to get one more to set a new career high. Other than that, not very much to talk about. The Hurricanes did outshoot the Toronto Maple Leafs overall in this game. It's just, outshot them 26-20, 11-4 in the first, 13-8 in the third. But the thing that was really killer for the Hurricanes, they got outshot 8-2 in the second period. Not much you can do when you're down. You're down 1-0 after 1. It's not terrible. At least you're close. You gave up a goal, 17 seconds left. Kind of a backbreaker, and then you should get 2 total shots in the second period. And you see Austin Matthews scoring a little over halfway. Then in the third, you had a really great period, but unfortunately, Nylander gets them up by 3 a minute 25 in. You finally score a goal almost 8 minutes into the third period, and then unfortunately, Tavares essentially ices the game. It's all said and done. The Maple Leafs win the regular season series, winning the last 2 games, of course, February 22nd back in Toronto, 6-3, and then on Sunday night, 4-1 in Carolina. The Hurricanes did win 1, but that was back on January 9th. So overall, it's just one of those games where they threw everything at, on the net except Joseph Wallstone in his head. stopping 25 of 26 for a 962 save percentage. Then you look at the Hurricanes when it comes to Frederick Anderson, and in the end, stops 16 of 20 for an 800 save percentage. Not really great. It's kind of a little bit of a struggle to see the fact that, before Saturday's game against the Rangers, Peter Kochetkov was, I would say, kind of struggling, definitely in his head, but it didn't help. The team in front of him didn't help. And then he gets the win. He gets a really much needed win against the Rangers, and of course, gets another Russian netminder once again. Frederick Anderson comes in, was 7-0 before his last couple starts, drops another one. Is there cause for concern? I don't really think there is a massive cause, but your ears start to perk up a little bit when you kind of see like, okay, ever since Clinch and the Hurricanes are kind of struggling, goal scoring it's kind of there. We look at the Rangers game, it was very, they put up 7 on them, but other than that, it's like you get 3 here, maybe 1 here, you get shut out there. So it's one of those things where, yes, you're trying to rest up some guys because you don't want any late injuries going into the playoffs like we saw with Jesper Foss last year. But at the same time, it's like, do you want to play for the second seed, which I would think would be kind of a big importance, but maybe the Hurricanes view it as, what's the difference if you're the second seed or the third seed in the East? It's the same, like everyone has to take the same path to the Stanley Cup, final and win the cup. It doesn't really matter, which, it makes sense. At least you got home ice round 1 against the Devils, but at the same time, you kind of wish you took this game against the Leafs, win the regular season series, get yourself within at least a point to battle for the second seed before you're going into your last 2 games of the regular season, where you have to go to Montreal Wednesday and Ottawa Thursday. Now you're 5 points back with 2 games to go. They're still mathematically in the hunt for the second seed, but they're going to have to win out, and Toronto has to lose out essentially for the Hurricanes to get that 2 seed. So at this rate, Carolina's most likely going to be the 3rd seed in the East. Unless they play Toronto or Washington, I think they still have a good shot of the Eastern Conference Final where they could have home ice advantage. It'll be interesting when it comes down to that. So overall, would you have loved the win for the last regular season home game? Yeah, of course. I mean, you want to do that. You want to send the fans home happy before you're back in Lenovo Center for the playoffs once again. Now you kind of have to wait till round 1 to get another home win. You kind of wish you finished the home record on a high note, setting a new, franchise record for, home wins in a season. Unfortunately, you don't do that. You tie, like I said, a team that went on to win the Stanley Cup. So maybe there's some silver linings. Maybe there's some of that 05-06 mojo going into these Hurricanes. And, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But, I mean, Sebastian Aho gets, another point. That's 2 in his last 2 games. Seth Jarvis 4 points in his last 4, tying his career high. So, hey, there's some silver linings. And they got a power play goal. So, that's all you can ask for if the power play starts, getting a little bit hot at the right time, or at least get warm enough to where you're like, okay, it's very manageable. But now with 2 games coming up on the road, of course, like I said, Montreal Wednesday, Ottawa on Thursday, they're not going to get to 500 on the road because they are now 16, 19, and 4, I believe, somewhere around there. So if they can win at least the next 2, they at least get up to 17. They're going to be within, get up to 18, put them a game under 500 on the road. That's all you can really do about that. But hey, you know what? Not a bad home record for the Carolina Hurricanes. Like I said, going 31-9-1, looking at 63 points. Not bad overall out of the 99 that you've gotten so far. That you got, 63 all at home. Not bad. You'll take that. So, but now the thing to really have to, while there's the good, there's also the concern. And the concern is the last 5 games where they are 1-4-1. So we will talk about that because, as we love to talk about the positive, we also got to talk about the kind of, I wouldn't say a huge elephant, maybe a small baby elephant in the room when it comes to the last 5 games. So stick around as we'll talk about that here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, developing, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with the top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So segment 1 was kind of the good, outside the 4-1 loss. The Hurricanes did have a really great home record for the 24-25 season, finishing 31-9-1. However, the last 5 games have not been the greatest for the Carolina Hurricanes, especially the playoffs coming up very soon. I know they're giving some guys extra rest, like Jordan Staal and Andrei Svechnikov. Now it's just Barrett Kotkaniemi and Shane Goss is spare. Even Jordan Martin got the day off against the Maple Leafs, but overall the Hurricanes are 1-4-1 in their last 5 games, and 3 of those games came off of a 3-game losing streak, which saw them getting outscored 13-4 against Detroit, Boston, and Buffalo. Yeah, they won very huge, against the Rangers. Did lose in the shootout to the Capitals, at least secure home ice in the first round. But, losing to the Maple Leafs 4-1 on Sunday kind of, is it a massive concern going into the playoffs? No. Is it a little bit of a concern? I would say yes, just because of the fact that Pierre Kochetkov played really well against the Rangers, but the team in front of him was kind of struggling in front of him. And then, now the same thing with the Hurricanes with Frederick Anderson kind of struggling a little bit in front of him. Freddie not getting the saves that you would really want out of him, along with Piotr. Goalies are really now averaging about sub 900 save percentages over the last few games outside of the Rangers one. So it's, like I said, it's not a massive concern, but it's one where you're kind of like, I don't really like where this team is trending right now, especially going into the playoffs. And I know, like I said, it's one of the things where the Hurricanes are trying to rotate guys in, give some guys rest where they need to be, because you got some extra forwards, extra defensemen, because you got William Carrier back, even with Kotkaniemi out. Now you can give like a guy like Jordan Martinook some rest. KK's out. When he comes back and healthy, who comes out of the lineup then? Same thing for defense. Shane Gossespierre is a little bit banged up, but he should be back for the Montreal game just like KK is. So, you're probably going to see Scott Morrow come in the lineup, or maybe they give Burns or Orlov or whoever a day off. So they're just trying to rotate their guys in, like they rotate their goalies and try to be like, hey, play hard, but don't play to where you might get hurt. We lose you for the playoffs, like they lost Jesper Fast in the last game of the regular season last year against Columbus going into the playoffs. Like I said, you do get Carey back. He's been really showing his physicality since his return after missing almost 39 games since early January. Some guys are banged up, so I understand trying to rest guys and rotate some players in and get ready for the playoffs. But even at the same point, though, it's like, taking your foot off the gas and start dropping games where you really shouldn't be dropping games? Like, I know, maybe they don't really view the second seed as that big of a deal, but at least, a better record of like maybe 2-2-1 would be at least a little bit better, or 2-3-1, or something where it's not as bad, or even 3-2-1 in their last 5 would have been great too. You're not winning every game, but you're at least winning more than you're losing. But 1-4-1 in their last 5 isn't really a great showing for the Hurricanes. Like I said, I know there's a lot going on surrounding that, trying to reserve guys, trying to get them ready for the playoffs, but you don't really want to start sputtering going into the playoffs and then try to get back into gear once again. Like, I know you beat the Rangers pretty heavily, but at the same time, I mean, it's round 1 of the playoffs, and the Devils are a lot better of a team than the Rangers are, even if they do have guys out right now with Hughes and a few others. But it's one of those things where you don't really want to have to try to put your foot back on the gas and really get back into full go, right when the playoffs start. Like you kind of want to be ready before then. So hopefully, with their games coming against Montreal and Ottawa, it kind of gives them a better test of like, okay, we got two teams we know are going to go to the playoffs with these two. You just played the Maple Leafs. You outshot them for the most part, but lost 4-1. You were up on Washington, blew the lead, got behind, tied it, lost in a shootout. Okay, that is what it is. But like you're seeing the points go up for Blake, Aho, and Jarvis. Yeah, you're getting some other contributions from some other parts of the lineup. Stankoven and Jankowski and stuff like that. Of course, the Jordans are getting on the action as well. The defense is doing some defense, like things like, Burns got an assist, Orlov got a goal, Jacob Slavin got an assist on the Stankoven goal. The goaltending is all right. It's not where it was in March, but it's doing okay. It's just you don't really want to have you have a great January, had a very off February, had a fantastic March, and now you're looking at a so April going into the playoffs. So you're kind of have this back and forth of like really great months to not so great, mediocre months to the season, especially with the last four before you go right into the playoffs. So hopefully, it's not a massive trend going into, the next phase of the season for the Hurricanes, but like I said, it's not like DEFCON 5 levels where you're like having to raise the alarms like, oh, okay, what's going to happen now? It's more of like, it's DEFCON 1, DEFCON 2, where it's like, okay, it's a little bit concerning. Definitely need to keep an eye on it. Maybe, hopefully something changes, but it's one of those things where you're not really feeling the greatest knowing that you're seeing a team that should be beating teams they really should be beating in the last month of the season, especially ones where you're not making the playoffs, a la Sabres, Bruins, Red Wings. Definitely should have taken care of business against those guys. You lose in the shootout to the Capitals, okay, whatever. It's the Capitals. It is what it is. Being the Rangers, you did the job. Playing Toronto, yeah, you outshot them, but Joseph Woll played out of his mind. However, you did give them a lot of opportunities that maybe they shouldn't really have. So, but you got 2 games left in the regular season. Hopefully, you kind of turn it around. But this is just not a stretch where you want to see them. Like I said, maybe 3-2-1 would have been better, or 2-3-1, whatever different combination you want to go with. It should, or it's one where it should be a lot better than it is. And right now, it's just your 1-4-1 in the last 6. It's just it's not great. It's not what you really want to be at right now. So I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, where you're trying to put yourself in a good spot to get have a little bit more of a mojo going into the playoffs than anything else, instead of being a team where you're like, okay, we're kind of there, but are we really there? And it's just you're in a kind of a tough spot where you want to be in a position to be that team ready to go. And as of right now, you're kind of putting yourself into a tough spot where now it's, okay, is this a small blip on the radar? Is this something to be concerned about? Those kind of things. Because, like I said, you don't want to have your goaltending being kind of shaky going in. You don't want the team, playing really great games where they need to, and then losing ones where they shouldn't lose ones. And, I wouldn't say there's any doubt, but I don't think we all know guys don't want to lose games. And I understand you're trying to preserve bodies and stuff like that too, but I don't know. It's just it's like nothing to be like in hysterics or like hitting the panic button, but it's more of a, okay, I'm not liking this trend. Hopefully, like I said, maybe it's just a blip, maybe it's just a bump in the road. Maybe things will change. Who knows? But optimism is a very big thing for the Hurricanes. I know for a lot of fans, optimism is high. Even with the weird season they've had. But you know what? You gotta look at this team and be like, hey, you know what? They're in the playoffs once again for the 7th year in a row. They're gonna play the Devils. Maybe this is just a weird thing where the Hurricanes are just maybe more concerned about preserving bodies than getting more points than because they're already in. It's one of those things. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens when we get to the playoffs. Now, following the loss on Sunday, Taylor Hall did meet with media, so we're going to listen to what he said to them here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to a segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Like I said, the end of segment 2, Taylor Hall did meet with media to talk about the game overall on Sunday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So without further ado, let's jump into that with Taylor Hall right now.
Nice to get at least a little breather yesterday and then get your legs back under you today.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's kind of where we are in the standings. It's fortunate for some of the guys to get some rest. I haven't missed many games this year, so it's been a long year, and with the trade and all that getting settled, it was nice to get some rest, do a little workout that I wouldn't normally be able to do, and other guys will get the same thing.
How hard are these games at the end of the year when it's hard? I know you don't want to look ahead, but it's hard not to at what's coming.
A little bit, but they're in kind of the same boat, right? So they beat us, and they don't have a ton to play for in the standings either. So in saying that, we know what the goal is, and we just need to be able to turn it on game 1 against Jersey.
Big thank you to Taylor Hall and the Carolina Hurricanes as always, and you kind of hear from him. Got a very much needed day off on Saturday. With everything's going on with him playing with the Blackhawks earlier this season, getting traded in January to the Canes. Got a very much needed day off to kind of relax the body, get rejuvenated, especially this late in the season. And he even said a lot of guys are going to get that too, like we saw with Jordan Martinook on Sunday. He got the day off. Kostas and Crackin have been kind of out of the lineup for precautionary reasons. Same thing with Shesterkov and Jordan Staal at the time before then. So it's just, trying to give extra guys, their extra, days rest, especially this late in the season, where they're at in the standings and stuff like that. And, you even heard, the media ask, hey, what, how hard is it to look ahead, even though there's 3 or 4 games left? How do you overcome that? He goes, well, it's just, same thing for the other side. The Maple Leafs are already going to win the Atlantic. I don't think they're going to go win. They're not going to go win the East to get the number 1 seed. So they're not really playing for much either. But it's just one of those things where, it's now all about getting ready for game 1 against New Jersey and hopefully getting up and getting ready for it. So it's just one of those things where you're in that kind of weird in between of you want to go win games, you want to go gain points and stuff like that, maybe fight for the 2nd seed in the East, but also at the same time, do you really want to get up for a game like that where it's it's like all these games do matter because you want to win games because you don't want to lose, but at the same time, you're having to tap into another mode of we want to win, but also we need to preserve buys, especially with all these guys that are available to do that. With this many games left, where there's maybe not a lot to play for at the end of the regular season, it's just, even with guys getting rest, maybe you are dropping games because, like I said, you're 1-4-1 in the last 6. You kind of want to win games, but also you are trying to preserve some of you're losing guys for the playoffs. It's that weird in between of you're in, but now you're kind of having to go through the last few games of the regular season before the playoff starts. So you want to win, but you also want to make sure you're not losing anyone in the process. So yeah, it's that weird part of the season where you're kind of torn of what path you want to go on. Do you fight for seedings, or do you preserve and get ready for round 1 of whoever you're facing? Of course, for the Hurricanes, we all know it's the New Jersey Devils, so that's just kind of a weird middle phase the Canes are in right now. So it is what it is. I mean, I know a lot of fans would love to see them get their last win at home before the playoffs start, but what can you do? But it's good to hear from Taylor Hall and get his perspective, especially for a guy who's been there and done that with multiple different teams in the playoffs, won an MVP, came in for the Carolina Hurricanes in that trade from Chicago, has played very well for the Canes, and just getting his perspective of he's that smooth operator, that guy who, will give the professional answers, but give you the insight of a guy who's been there and done that so far in his career with multiple teams, like I said, going to different playoffs and stuff like that. So overall, it is what it is. The Hurricanes, like I said, the Hurricanes finished 31-9-1 at home. Now they sit, on the season with a 47-28 and, 5 record, 99 points. You're, not going to get the 50. Unfortunately, no 50-win season for the Hurricanes, but they only at least need one more point to get 100 once again. Hopefully it's a win on Tuesday or on Thursday against Montreal or Ottawa. You got your 100-plus points once again, and now you kind of just, get an extra boost before you get to the start of round 1 in the playoffs against the New Jersey Devils. Hopefully it's 2 wins in a row. It'd be kind of nice to go on a 2-game winning streak to finish up the month of April and get ready for round 1 of the 2025 playoffs. But it's crazy to think that the home slate's already done. 41 home games already completed. Now we just wait for game 40 and 41 on the road to get to 82 on the season. And it's absolutely bonkers that we're finally at the end of the finish line of the regular season before we get into the playoffs. Once again for your Carolina Hurricanes for their 7th straight postseason. So definitely should be interesting to see how that plays out. I know we're going into the last week of the regular season. Only 2 games left. Like I said, Montreal Wednesday, Ottawa Thursday. Should be a fun time for sure. Should be an interesting week here at Locked On Hurricanes. So make sure to stay locked in with me here at Locked On Canes. We get to do all of that once again for the last week of the regular season. And before we know it, game 1, round 1 of the against the New Jersey Devils will be here. That will be a Monday edition. Thank you. Check out Locked On Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to keep up with me, I'm one true Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at the Zachary Martin, where I do have links, trees in my bios where you can find all my Carolina Hurricanes articles at thehockeywriters.com. If you want to check out my baseball coverage, it's coveringthecorner.com, at SB Nation, talking about the Cleveland Guardians. If you want to check out my other podcast, well, it's the Surgecast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. If you want to check out Locked On Hurricanes, well, it's on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio. Follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating or review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, well, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up so let me know if you like the show as well. Share it with all other Keniacs to become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed this Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope you enjoy your Monday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.